Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I'm so excited talking with someone back in Colorado. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can see the snow in the window behind her. And I admit, I don't miss the snow. Living here in Atlanta, I do not miss that. But please join us in welcoming Molly McGrath to our program today. Welcome, Molly. How are you doing?
Oh, Deb, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. I absolutely love a snow.
It's pretty to watch, and and it's really pretty when it's coming down, and then it's luck, right? So, but yeah, it's I do miss seeing it because it is just so beautiful. But it's the after effects that are just bleh. And of course, having to drive in it, that's always great fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let me tell folks just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this because we're going to have a great conversation today. So, Molly McGrath is the founder of Hiring and Empowering Solutions, LLC. She is committed to serving the legal community in staffing, employee engagement, intrapreneurship, and employee retention initiatives. She's proudly delivered results for more than 5,000 law firms over the past 25 years across the country. In addition, she is a top 10% legal podcaster, a 16-year legal blogger, and a 3-time #1 Amazon best-selling author. Her books include, and I love all these titles, Fix My Boss, The Simple Plan to Cultivate Respect, Risk Courageous Conversations, and Increase the Bottom Line, Intrapreneurs in an Entrepreneur World, How to Empower Your Employees to Step Up and Lead, Don't Be a Yes Chick, How to Stop Baby. I love this. We're going to have to talk about this. Don't Be a Yes Chick, How to Stop Babysitting Your Boss, Transform Your Job, and Work with a Dream Team without losing your sanity or spirit in the process. So again, Molly, welcome.
Thank you. How fun.
We really are going to have a great conversation. And it was funny. We were chatting before the program that even though you focus on hiring and employee retention and things like that in the legal world, it's across any industry. It's how do you get good people? How do you keep good people? And all of those things. And so we really are going to have a great conversation. But like I said, you've been doing this quite a while. So tell us a little bit about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. And I'll wrap in a little bit about my backstory, which ties into the title for every book that I named, which was carefully calculated and chosen. I, like many entrepreneurs, I was one of the critical team members first hired for a legal organization. They sold software, training, coaching back in 1996 when coaching was not a
right.
term.
People thought of coaches as in football.
Yep, sports. And so they, especially in the legal industry. And so I was really, really fortunate to be hired as an administrative assistant and have some phenomenal bosses and mentors and leaders that really poured into me. And, I always say this, when you are trying to build a business, your greatest asset is people. And at the end of the day, you need to give people time, attention, and feedback. We're hiring human beings first and foremost, and not human doings. And that's what I learned at a very, very tender age of 26. And when I was first hired and working in the legal industry, working with attorneys, very intimidating, knew nothing about it. And so I had a great boss that poured into me and wanted to start a first coaching program for attorneys, and I helped get that off the ground with him. Our clients were all over the country. Every 90 days, we would shut down and 1,500 law firms across the country would meet in a different hotel conference room across the country. And my job was to talk to the attorneys, member services, client services, and I'd be at the breakfast bar, the coffee breaks, what have you. And I'd say, tell me about your practice. And they would say, business is great, but for the employees.
Right.
And then I would turn to their team members that were there. Tell me a little bit about your job. What's working? What's not working? And they would say, my job is great if only my boss would let go of control and let me. I was expecting money, clients, workload, stress. Nope. They were like, they're a control freak. They hire me to do a job and they won't let me do it. And that was really the birthing of my passion and my why, where I got to a place where I said, they both want the same thing. There's a massive disconnect here. They're not speaking the same language. And that's really where I got incredibly passionate about building what back then we called a key assistant program. And so the attorneys would be in one conference room, being taught about building a business, marketing, all the good things, budgets, P&Ls, and I would be training the team on teaching them on how to support their attorney.
I love it. And especially in the legal world, it's, I would imagine, a challenge because the attorneys are very well educated. I mean, they went to school for quite a long time. And then if they've specialized, it's even more. And, and then you have kind of the middle range, right? The paralegals, the support, and then you've got the admin staff and people like that. And so it's kind of these very different layers. And did you find that it really was kind of I hate to say a caste system, but almost like that, like you had your really important people and then the people who supported them? Do you think that might've been what part of the issues were?
Well, I love that you asked that question. And I want to circle back on something that you said earlier, that I focus in the legal industry, but it transcends across.
Right. Yeah. A boss
owners.
Is a boss is a boss.
A boss is a boss, a boss. But for your listeners, hey, gang, I want to give you a secret. You have a leg up. You are in a much better position than the attorneys because in law school, to your point, high intellect, what have you. But the attorneys tell me, we were trained to be skeptics, believe nothing. So their mindset and their challenges, I would say, are 10, if not 20, if not 100-fold for an average entrepreneur or small business owner. So they have a lot of undoing to do with their head and their mind of why they were trained to believe nothing, trust nobody, all the things.
That's the legal system.
It's very difficult. So going back to the caste system, no, I don't see that. And honestly, and that would probably shock most people at the end of the day. I think those days, there are still some traditional old school stuffy law firms that believe in that. Those
and we watch those on TV, right?
Yes. And I will not work with law firms like that. Right. But by and large, I think it really transcends across every business. And the interesting thing, and what I talk about in my books, my podcasts, everything, I really speak to the employees because part of it is not the boss, it's the employee. You just said you went through the ranks, right? And then you get down to terminology like just a receptionist.
Yes. Oh, I hate that word.
But they say it about themselves because they typically are coming in. Maybe they went to junior college. Maybe they didn't go to college at all. Maybe they have come from a previous. Everybody's always picking from their past experience. So a lot of it is really their own confidence level. So sometimes it's I see more often that it doesn't necessarily come from the boss or the leaders or the management, but it's their own kind of demons that they have to reckon with and really to own their roles and to really embrace the growth track because a lot of times nobody else believed in them.
Right. And the thing I think that they need to remember is, especially with, say, attorneys, physicians, people like that, that even, a small business owner who does landscaping, whatever, they are very educated and trained in that little area, that focused area, I should say. They know how to do law, they know how to do medical, they know how to do landscaping. They do not know how to do bookkeeping, marketing, all of those things that then they hire for. So they're hiring the people to be those experts. And I think that's, that comes back to the thing. They're not just that whatever, they are the expert in whatever it is that they're providing.
It's so funny that you say that, because it's exactly my mindset and what I preach for my clients. It's like your niche. So if you're a niche in a mergers and acquisition attorney or a dermatologist, or you just work on custom homes as a landscape, your craft and your skill set is irrelevant until you have a paying client. And we all know what it takes to get a lead, to get somebody interested in getting them to the place to signing an engagement agreement and hiring us. Until that point, your job doesn't really, your skill set really is not needed.
Right. And it is a challenge, because whether it's a law firm or whatever, when we decide, hey, we're going to start a business, we do it because there's a passion that is there. But we don't want to do the marketing, the bookkeeping, all of those things. And I think that's why we see so many businesses fail, is they either just give up or they don't hire well, and various things like that. Or they say, okay, I don't like doing these things, so I'm going to go back to work for someone else. And then I can go back to focusing on my little area that I really love. And, there's obviously so many small businesses that, I think the stat is that, according to the federal government, 95% of businesses in the US are small businesses based on income, not size or anything like that. But, it is all about how do you hire those right people so then you can continue with your passion in life, and not thinking, I got to do the invoicing today, I've got to do this. Now you need to know how to do those things, because you have to know if they're doing it right or wrong, right? But you don't have to be that expert. You need to focus on what it is that you're good at and what your passion is.
Yes. And to your point, and maybe you're not good at, maybe you hung your own shingle because you had anti-authoritarian complex.
Right. You didn't want to work for the man.
You didn't want to work for the man. Or because mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or so-and-so, it's just in their bones and their blood. Or maybe it's because you've come from too many downsizing. And you worked in corporate and you're exhausted. Whatever the reason is, at the end of the day, I would say, first and foremost, you have to get really clear on what you are good at. Most entrepreneurs are not good at leadership. Most entrepreneurs don't really understand marketing or want to do it. And I hear all the time from business owners, I don't want to be bragging. I don't want to be promoting myself. I don't know how to write a blog. I hate sales, all the things. And to your point, I do believe that's why most businesses either fail, depending on what your definition of failure is. And for me, I think failure is just limping along for 20 years and still doing it. And it's like that old commercial, time to make the donuts, and for anyone who's old enough to see. And it is the people, when you go to selling your business, the first thing from a valuation, they look at your people.
Right.
And they look at when you are out no longer in the business, how is it going to run without you? And so I agree with you. The bookkeeping in this day and age, my goodness, Deb. I mean, hiring overseas in the Philippines, I have so many of my law firms going back to the paralegals, in the legal market, and for anyone in your industry, it's an employee-driven market.
Right.
It is very difficult. It's very costly. And they're like, I hear from people when they start their own business, they're like, I'm not making any money. How am I going to pay for somebody? And it's like, well, it's a chicken and egg factor. You're never going to make money if you're bookkeeping for, 40% of your day, or if you're data entering for 15% of your day, or whatever it might
Mhm.
be. So you really have to build the business with
Mhm.
the end in mind.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, the biggest definition of an entrepreneur is a risk taker.
Mhm.
So, but you don't have to have high salaries.
Mhm.
I have many, many of my clients that have paralegals,
Mhm.
that have bookkeepers, that have marketers,
Mhm.
myself included. I have 9 full-time
Mhm.
employees in the Philippines that do my
Mhm.
marketing,
Mhm.
my bookkeeping, what have you. So there's never in the history of
Mhm.
time been a more profitable
Mhm.
model to delegate and elevate
Right.
that there has now,
Mhm.
especially with hiring
Mhm.
overseas.
Right. Well, and and we're also seeing fractional employees where they're only working part-time
Yep.
for somebody. And I love that concept because so many businesses don't need, say, a full-time CFO. They need somebody that's going to do 3 hours a week.
Yep.
And so they find somebody who has that expertise and they hire them either as an employee or as a consultant. It probably would be as a consultant. And then that person is free to do whatever else they want with the rest of their week. But so they're able to get that expertise, they're able to utilize those big brains, and grow their businesses till the point where maybe they do hire a full-time person, or maybe they don't want to. They might want to just stay at that nice level that they're at.
Yes, I started my business that way.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my clients have with the fractional
Mm-hmm.
model in that regard. And I think getting out of that old school
Mm-hmm.
W-2 full-time
Mm-hmm.
employment mindset is a game changer for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
and business owners.
Right. And it's interesting because, of course, what we were brought up with was that you had to hire a full-time employee. I mean, that was just what you thought. And then when we started talking about these part-time fractional, whatever we want to call them, and even consultants and freelancers, it totally changed things.
Mm.
Like my business, I do marketing for people on a consultant basis. So we work with people who don't have a need for a full-time person. If they ever reach that stage, then that's fine. But for the most part, they're like, now we need an hour a week, or maybe 10 hours at one point in time, all those things. And so it works perfect for us because we can pick and choose what we want to do. But we're able to provide very specific, very tailored support. And people aren't hiring somebody to sit in a desk for however many hours a week, not really doing a lot of work all the time.
Well, and another factor of that, which I, am a huge fan of, think about it. When you hire full time,
Mm-hmm.
whether you have the workload for
Mm-hmm.
them and or what's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest stressor for
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs? They
Mm-hmm.
don't have time.
Right.
So I
Mm-hmm.
will hear all the time in my recruiting business, I need somebody who comes batteries included.
Mm-hmm.
They better be trained up
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have time
Right.
to train them. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I don't know how to train them
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, I think really outsourcing, fractional
Mm-hmm.
model,
Mm-hmm.
hiring agencies, things of that nature are wonderful because you can slide right in
Mm-hmm.
immediately. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you're a business owner, you're an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur. So do you think they have to worry if you're
Mm-hmm.
ever doing your job?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
You understand
Mm-hmm.
what it takes to get
Mm-hmm.
and keep a client
Mm-hmm.
and over deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so many
Mm-hmm.
multipliers within that model
Mm-hmm.
that I really, really appreciate.
Right. Well, and good and bad, one of the things that we got from COVID was that your employees or your consultants or whoever it is, whatever you're calling them, can literally be around the world. I mean, you mentioned Philippines. There are people who, whether they're hiring outside the US or just in multiple locations in the US, so that the cool thing is it's actually giving them the opportunity to hire better.
Mm.
And I love that concept because they're like, maybe they're based here in Atlanta, but the person who would be the absolute best for that job for them is in, say, Paris. Okay, well, once you figured out the time difference thing, and how to deal with that, you're able to hire them because technology is allowing us to basically act like they're in the same room with us.
technology is number one from a usability, but number two, from a scalability too. It really forces people to up level how they're running their businesses. And, I know for me, I got many phone calls from successful law firm owners that could not wrap their head around a virtual world. They always had a brick and mortar building. And they literally called me and said, I'm closing down my practice. Do you know anyone who wants to buy it? If not, I'm just shutting the doors. I can't deal with this. I don't know how. Old dog, new trick, not interested.
I want them under my thumb.
Yes. But in this day and age, it really causes us as entrepreneurs to really up-level. There's our accountability because we have to have the databases, the CRMs, the automations, the tracking, the reporting, all that. And once people got through it after COVID, they're like, "Ooh, that was a ride," but my business has never been healthier and more streamlined. And I can tell you exactly what's going on in every department, every role, every person.
Right. Yeah. Once we figured all of that out, like I said, time differences, work schedules, all of those things, it does work really pretty well. Now, I get that, and I've been home-based for 25 years. And I understand the benefits of being in one location, right? Because you're talking about what you watched on TV last night, and you see the pictures of the kids at their soccer game, and and you're able to just pop into somebody's office, and so there's obviously advantages, but yeah, the virtual workspace is definitely not going to go away. And now we're in that adjustment period of people, well, do we want them in? Do we want them not? But the other thing that it really allows for is for something like, say, a law firm to staff up and staff down. They've got a big, huge case that takes lots of manpower hours. Fine. They hire people just for that. And then when things get a little bit more lean, well, then, it's not like they're letting people go. They were just hired for that project.
Yeah. And even for the brick and mortar people, whether you're roofing or the landscaper, like you said, or the pool service or whatever it is, it's not an either or conversation. It's an and, just getting really clear on what roles need to be in-house or in office or what have you. But, I've seen many of even my friends and family and what have you that traditionally had somebody boots on the ground doing sales, what have you. They had no digital or social media. Like, I don't need it. It's all referral based, blah, blah, blah. Well, now their business has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, what have you, because they during COVID, had to start doing digital and social media and paid advertising and things of that nature, which is really great. So there is a need for in-house, and just get really clear on what positions absolutely need it, and then hire and find the people, because there are a lot of people coming out of COVID now that are like, when I do interviewing, they're like, I need an in-office position. My husband works from home, and I'm going to kill him.
Driving me nuts.
I'm going to kill him. I need, or that's just their personality and their DNA. They need that collaboration. They want to talk about Survivor. They need people.
Right. And yeah, people, it's funny what they go to offices for. I talked to one woman, and this was maybe 8 months or so into COVID, and her me time was her commute time. And she commuted about 45 minutes each way. And she loved that. That was when she would listen to podcasts. That was, all sorts of different things. And then poof, it went away because she was all of a sudden working from home. And so what she did was she still got in her car and she drove and she drove for whatever half of 45 minutes is. And then she turned around and she came back. And so she still had that me time. Now that might be kind of an extreme. But it, once we adapted to it, I think people realized either A, this really worked, or it didn't. I mean, there are people who, like you said, they want to be in that workspace. They now nobody likes the commute, really. Even if you're listening to podcasts and things. And I'm in Atlanta. Commutes here are hideous. Oh my gosh! I mean, my husband, his commute on a good day was an hour, and so to get 2 hours back every day, that was pretty cool. but yeah. So but you mentioned hiring right, and I think that is probably one of the biggest things, because we still continue to see, wherever it is, hiring immediate. We're having a job fair and we're going to hire on the spot. Help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. I was somewhere over the weekend, and now granted this was a retail space, but there was a sign on the door that said, "We are short staffed. Please be patient with us." And so that comes back to, it is the employee's benefit, because people need to hire. And so, how do you still make sure that you've got the right person who's not going to be the person you're paying every day? Remember that? I love that. And it was especially fast food restaurants where they would say paying daily, because they knew they might not come back the next day. So how do you get the right people who are going to be with you for the period of time that you need them for?
I love that question. I get it all the time. I need someone who doesn't job hop around. I need
Mm-hmm,
somebody
mm-hmm,
who, whether it's your first hire or
mm-hmm.
your 10th hire, I
Right.
need somebody. I'm not going to pour into training
Mm-hmm,
them,
mm-hmm,
onboarding them, all
mm-hmm,
that to have them leave in a year,
mm-hmm,
whatever it might be. And I always like to hold myself accountable as a
mm-hmm,
business owner. And it's on us first and
mm-hmm,
foremost. So, when I'm doing recruiting
mm-hmm,
and staffing and all that,
mm-hmm,
my first question I ask a business owner is, why is your company the best company to work at?
mm-hmm.
Why would somebody want to date you? Why would
Right.
somebody want to hang
Mm-hmm,
out with you? Why
mm-hmm,
would somebody want to
mm-hmm,
leave their position
mm-hmm,
and come work for
mm-hmm.
you? And I can't tell you how many people, they'll be like, well, we have vision, we have
It's
dental,
on the wall.
or it's hanging in a conference
Mm-hmm,
room like a TJ Maxx home sign
mm-hmm,
that we bought that means
mm-hmm,
nothing, and we
mm-hmm.
don't live and
Right.
walk and talk
Mm-hmm,
like that. So, it is an employee market,
mm-hmm,
but first and foremost, you have to really, for yourself, when it comes to
mm-hmm,
hiring, when it comes to keeping people,
mm-hmm,
retaining people, you have to take a hard, cold look in the
mm-hmm,
mirror
mm-hmm,
and look at what you have
mm-hmm,
to offer as a leader.
mm-hmm,
That's your number one. You're not a boss.
mm-hmm.
You are a
Right.
leader.
Mm-hmm,
You're a coach. You're an
mm-hmm,
inspirer,
mm-hmm,
whether it's about your product and your
mm-hmm,
service, but also who you are within. And I
mm-hmm,
don't like this term. I think COVID just destroyed it, but the culture,
mm-hmm,
because I think it means people are so unclear what that is.
mm-hmm,
And it's really the energy.
mm-hmm.
It is
Right.
really the energy
Mm-hmm,
pumping through the
mm-hmm,
virtual or brick and mortar
mm-hmm,
walls of your firm. So when it comes time to hiring, a few things is number one is really when you're going through the interviewing process and you're interviewing people, I would say get really, really clear and walk them through what their day would look
mm-hmm.
like. Be honest with
Okay.
them
Mm-hmm,
about what this job is. My
mm-hmm,
very first employee that I hired, my first executive
mm-hmm,
assistant, I wrote an ad on Indeed and I'm
mm-hmm,
like, we're growing. We're a mess. We have no processes. I'm a train wreck.
mm-hmm.
Apply if you're interested. I had to shut down the ad after two
Right.
hours. I had
Because everybody went,
40.
"Oh, that's me."
They're
But
like,
then
I'm
they
a
had no,
project
right.
manager.
Mm-hmm,
And so when I
mm-hmm,
started interviewing
mm-hmm,
people, I'm like, show me the math. Show
mm-hmm,
me how you've done
mm-hmm,
this before for a startup business. Show me how you've done
mm-hmm,
this for an overstressed,
mm-hmm,
overtaxed entrepreneur.
mm-hmm,
And it was really
mm-hmm,
fascinating for the people that, well, I ordered them lunch. Well, nope, I took their to-do list. I put in a
mm-hmm,
Trello board. I set up the CRM. I hired them their first, and I'm like,
mm-hmm,
okay. So you want people to show that you want to show them the math and you want
mm-hmm.
them to show you the math of
Right.
how you don't want to ask them about where their goals are in 5 years. You don't, if
Mm-hmm,
COVID taught us anything, we all had plans for 5 years
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
God left.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so you want to really get specific
mm-hmm,
about that. The other thing
mm-hmm,
I would say is just once you do hire the right person, remember you're hiring human beings, not
mm-hmm.
human doing
Right. Mm-hmm,
first.
mm-hmm,
And what I mean by that, I will have people tell me, attorneys especially, I need somebody with this specific skill set. I need
mm-hmm,
somebody with this specific knowledge. I'm like,
mm-hmm,
you can train skill set and knowledge all day long,
mm-hmm,
especially with chat
mm-hmm,
GPT, with
mm-hmm,
all of the
mm-hmm.
different online courses. You cannot train the human stuff.
Right.
Most people get fired or leave because of the human stuff.
Mm-hmm,
Either our human stuff as
mm-hmm,
leaders
mm-hmm,
because we're grouchy or
mm-hmm,
we're not clear or
mm-hmm,
we don't like to communicate. We don't have system, whatever it might be, or theirs. So I would just say get really clear and powerful on the questions that you ask when you're interviewing them, and then pause and make sure their questions are deeply curious and just as thoughtful. Whenever when I'm interviewing them, I'm like, what questions do you have for me? And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. And if they say, oh, I don't have any, no.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you want them to have researched either you or the industry, right? And so that you want them to say, hey, I saw in Denver Business Journal that your company was one of the 40 under 40s or whatever. And folks, that doesn't take you a lot of time to learn all this stuff.
And to add to that, but you also want to pay attention where they're present. So when you're talking and you're describing your business model, you're describing your marketing strategy, whatever it might be. And when they come back and they're like, okay, you see, like I love when people say, hey, I'm going to be looking down because I'm taking notes.
I'm taking notes.
Huge sign. Can't tell you how many people don't do that. But when they're like, when you said earlier about your lead generation strategy,
they paid attention.
They paid attention. They're present. They're deeply curious. They're engaged.
Right.
And so you have them hired. Now, most business owners like, whew, okay, freedom.
Yeah,
no,
there you go.
They'll dump, and some people can handle that. It's not that it's retaining an employee. So when you say people are giving money, paying daily, or you have signs hiring immediately, or you have signs that say, you know, my daughter who's 19 works at a local barbecue joint here, you know, she will drive back from college for an hour and a half when her manager calls her and says, we're short staffed. Do you want to come work this weekend? They never are hiring because they love that is an amazing place to work. So when you see that as entrepreneurs, we're not off the hook. Once we hire someone, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And I always say gamify it and just assume that you're re-enrolling that person every single day into why you want to keep it.
Right. You know, and we see time and time again, you know, the surveys, all of those things where money is not the top factor.
No.
You know, yes, it's there. But you know, and it's the benefits, it's things like that, but it is that word culture. You know, all of those things. It's funny. I do special event planning for dog shows, very strange hobby that I have, right? And so I work with hotels, and we had two hotels basically competing for a show that we were doing. In 6 months, I had at one of the properties, I had 3 different directors of sale in 6 months.
I believe it.
In the other one, I was dealing with a person who was one of their first hires 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, it almost came down to, I didn't care what the other one said.
Or the price.
Yeah. Because I knew that the organization that had 20-year plus employees was the type of place that was going to, obviously they're treating their employees well. So that means they're going to treat their customers well. And, you know, and we weren't just a commodity. I mean, we were definitely a commodity with the other one. They basically told us, you know, if you decide you're not going to do this, we've got 3 other people waiting for that span or that time frame. Well, you know, what that meant was I had no negotiating power. Right. But, you know, it also, I want to know that they're treating their employees well. And I read those stories when they say the top 100 companies to work for are whatever. I mean, you know, and it's funny. I interviewed somebody earlier this month on keeping your employees happy. And he said, you know, that sounds really stupid, but that's one of the most important things is, do people go, oh, it's Friday, I have to go home? Or do they go, oh, it's Monday, I have to go to work? You know? And, you know, and now, are they going to be happy all the time? No, you know, all these various things, but what are we going to do to retain those employees? And I think that is one of the hardest things, because I think so many people assume we can get somebody else easily. Well, they might be able to get them easily, but are they going to be worth it?
Yeah. And keeping your employees happy, I would say keeping them engaged and empowered as well, because you
Right.
really can't control their
Mm-hmm.
happiness, but you
Mm-hmm.
can control them being
Mm-hmm.
engaged and empowered. To your point, how do you do that? You do it with setting up a structure
Mm-hmm.
and a system for
Mm-hmm.
communication.
Mm-hmm.
So, my teams that are very clear on their job descriptions and their key
Mm-hmm.
performance indicators, even just the receptionist,
Mm-hmm.
what value they bring to the
Mm-hmm.
job. They won't leave when there's a weekly meeting
Mm-hmm.
with the whole team meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They won't leave when there's a daily huddle
Mm-hmm.
where we're using it
Mm-hmm.
like our locker room
Mm-hmm.
huddle before we go
Mm-hmm.
on that Super Bowl playing field.
Mm-hmm.
They want, again, they're human beings,
Mm-hmm.
time, attention,
Mm-hmm.
and feedback. And to
Mm-hmm.
your point, I had an interview with an attorney, a very specialized
Mm-hmm.
attorney in estate planning and elder law
Mm-hmm.
this morning, and he took a job with a $30,000 pay cut
Mm-hmm.
and no benefits
Ah.
because of the structure of the
Mm-hmm.
firm. They're investing
Mm-hmm.
in marketing,
Mm-hmm.
huge growth.
Mm-hmm.
They have support team that
Mm-hmm.
support them, allow them to be an
Mm-hmm.
attorney. The attorney wants to sell the business
Mm-hmm.
in 15 years, and there's
Ah. Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
succession planning
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. They have
Mm-hmm.
weekly meetings. They have daily huddles. They
Mm-hmm.
have quarterly employee growth plans.
Mm-hmm.
They have quarterly team
Mm-hmm.
retreats, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And he's leaving
Mm-hmm.
$30,000
Mm-hmm.
pay cut and no benefits for
Mm-hmm.
this because he
Mm-hmm.
can see the future.
Right.
And not only that, but people always
Mm-hmm.
measure time and energy as
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, or time and money. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
talks about energy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think
Right.
COVID really
Mm-hmm.
gave us that
Mm-hmm.
spiritual gift
Mm-hmm.
of sitting on the couch and taking stock of your
Mm-hmm.
life. And you finally had the power of the
Mm-hmm.
pause, and you're like, what am I doing with
Mm-hmm.
every hour of my
Right.
day?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I feel?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think, when we know we can change jobs or start our own company or do whatever, that does make it a little bit more powerful for us. But it's interesting because obviously things have changed with generations. I'm right at the end of baby boomers, but my parents were very clearly the type of people that you took a job, you did the job. It didn't matter if you liked it or not, you did the job. And now we're like, no, I want to work for a company that provides value. I want to work for a company that might have good education programs. I mean, all of those things. We used to laugh when people said, we're going to bring in childcare. And we were like, really? Well, no, that's actually something that is very valuable to employees. Or, and I think the thing we really learned with COVID was flexible work schedules, right? Because people went, okay, for one thing, we're not commuting, so we've got extra time. But, unless I think, and I talked to a lot of people who said, they figured out, okay, well, they're not going to work as long because they're not having the side tracks and things like that. So they can get done in 6 hours what might have taken them 8 before. Now, once you put your head around the fact that, okay, they were going to get it done in 6 hours and that was all right. But they also might get it done working from 6 to midnight. That might just be the better time for them. I think being able to have that flexibility where possible, I mean, it's not always possible, obviously, but where we're able to give our employees that flexibility, or more importantly, work from the beach. I tell people I can work any place I have internet, to be able to do that. And, I mentioned it, we can have employees or consultants or whoever from around the world, because we now have finally realized, okay, we can be flexible.
Yeah. And not all industries are that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really goes back to the mindset
Right.
of the person
Mm-hmm.
you're hiring, because flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that. When it's
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs hear that word,
Mm-hmm.
they cringe, they
Right.
get triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that framework and
Mm-hmm.
you set up their roles and goals for the week, for the
Mm-hmm.
month, for the quarter,
Mm-hmm.
they're engaged in the
Mm-hmm.
overall vision. They're engaged in
Mm-hmm.
the overall mission for the day, for the week,
Mm-hmm.
for the month,
Mm-hmm.
what have you. They'll take a bullet for you if
Mm-hmm.
there's some level of flexibility.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I work with attorneys. Many of
Mm-hmm.
them are trial attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
things of
Right.
that
That's a
nature.
fixed schedule.
Well, no, not necessarily. We might have a
True.
trial on March 1st.
Right.
And right. So we're sitting
So
here and
between now
thinking,
and then, you
yep.
can be very flexible.
Yeah, but you plan
Hmm.
your work and work your
Hmm.
plan.
Hmm.
But there are still
Hmm.
businesses out there that are like 8 to 5. But
Right.
even if you have,
Hmm.
deadlines and due dates
Hmm.
and it does require in the office, as long as they know that there's collaboration,
Hmm.
as long as they know that there's appreciation
Hmm.
for the home life
Hmm.
and for
Right.
personal and
Hmm.
professional life, as long as they name
Hmm.
and like self-care.
Hmm.
Like that's one of the things
Hmm.
that I have in my motto. Every single person has to take a 30-minute break to at
Ah.
least move their body and
Hmm.
walk. And they
Hmm.
report in every single day as a
Hmm.
daily huddle, and the team hold
Hmm.
each other accountable.
Hmm.
And so, it's flexibility. I think this
Hmm.
terminology, just like
Hmm.
culture, gets
Hmm.
really fuzzy and
Hmm.
muddy right now.
Hmm.
And it's getting clear on what flexibility
Hmm.
means for your
Hmm.
business. But the days of stay
Hmm.
chained to a desk
Hmm.
are over. The days
Right.
of our parents'
Hmm.
generation
Hmm.
where you're lucky to have a
Hmm.
job
Hmm.
was, you're
Right.
lucky to have a
And
job.
you stayed forever.
Yes. Yes,
Hmm.
because you had to, not
Hmm.
because you wanted to,
Hmm.
and that's a difference now. Is
Hmm.
because people really want to.
Hmm.
They don't want a job hop.
Hmm.
While they know they can get
Hmm.
another job,
Hmm.
it's really inspiring to
Hmm.
me, interviewing
Hmm.
candidates all day, every day.
Hmm.
How many of them will not just take another
Hmm.
job? They are so methodical
Hmm.
and deeply curious
Hmm.
and interested in
Hmm.
investing in the interviewing
Hmm.
process. I would argue more than even the
Hmm.
employer is.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. And yeah, because uh, job hopping, there are reasons for it, but in many cases, it's okay. I want it. What they want might be something that could be provided. I was remembering one the other day where I was working with this young woman on her LinkedIn profile, and she was not feeling fulfilled, appreciated, empowered, any of those words that are so very important at
Hmm.
her job. And so she was, we were working on her LinkedIn profile so then she could get something else. And her boss discovered it. Happened to notice that on LinkedIn she was spiffing it up, and he's a smart dude. He figured out
Yeah.
what was going on, and so he called her in, and she immediately thought she's fired. She was, and the opposite happened. He said, "You are a valued employee. What can we do to keep you?"
Yes.
And as far as I know, she's still there. And this was quite a while ago. But because she had invested in it. She told me, she said, I have a parking spot, and things like that. And she liked the company. It was just she wanted to do something different with it. And she really didn't like her boss. I mean, that was kind of one of the things it came down to. And so they said, okay, well, because you are a trusted and valued employee, we're going to find another way for you to stay with us.
Mm. And that's what I was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do that sooner, do it
Mm-hmm.
often.
Right.
I always tell my clients and myself,
Mm-hmm.
don't get too big for your bridges.
Mm-hmm.
The second we hire someone, we
Mm-hmm.
have to assume they have one foot out the
Mm-hmm.
door.
Right.
And that keeps us on our toes
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
constantly be like, okay,
Right.
to your client, be
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, Susie,
Mm-hmm.
how's it going? How are
Mm-hmm.
you feeling? Having
Mm-hmm.
scheduled, structured
Mm-hmm.
time. Give the space and grace to your
Mm-hmm.
employees like you do for a client
Mm-hmm.
or a sales
Mm-hmm.
meeting.
Right. I think one of the dumbest things in the world, and they still exist, are they once a year performance reviews,
Yeah,
right? And
they're
the rest of the
worthless.
time, yeah. And I remember when I had to do them. I have not worked for somebody else for many, many years. But I hated the once a year performance reviews because they were a total waste of time. We all knew what we needed to say. They knew what they needed to say. And you went in and you had here's my 5 things that I did really well this year. Here's the 5 things that I want to improve on. And you went, okay, fine. And you left. As opposed to maybe once a week. How you doing? Hey, Molly, is there anything that we could be doing different? Maybe once a month, whatever works. But yeah, just asking once a year, How
Yeah.
silly is that?
Well, yeah, and you can't make any improvement.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things,
Right.
for tips for your listeners,
Mhm.
that even if you have just one employee,
Mhm.
even if you just have a
Mhm.
fractional employee,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. In your weekly meetings,
Mhm.
hopefully you are doing them.
Mhm. Mhm.
You are having the conversation. One of the things I hardwired in the agenda is for them to talk about what
Mhm.
worked about last week, what
Mhm.
didn't work about last
Right.
week,
Mhm.
where do you need
Mhm.
help, and where you
Mhm.
stuck and jammed up.
Mhm.
Just those four simple
Mhm.
questions will be game changing for
Right.
your business.
Mhm. Mhm.
And your business, to your
Right.
point with the hotel
Mhm.
analogy, is because of the people that are still
Mhm.
there 20 years
Mhm.
later.
Right.
It says a lot.
Mhm. Right. And when you don't ask those questions on a very regular basis, things snowball very quickly.
Mm.
And that is why people leave and they feel unappreciated and all of those things. And maybe it was a simple fix that you could have done, but you just never asked.
Yeah, or you don't even have to do it. It could be
Mhm.
a simple fix.
Mhm.
Fix. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
what your team, what your employees,
Mhm.
fractional overseas, don't care. What they want is to know that their voice matters.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
if you give them a platform
Mhm. Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
facilitate for them to
Mhm.
use their voice,
Mhm.
here's a sidebar. If you are asking these questions and you get deer in the headlight looks, you get
Mhm.
crickets and nobody's saying
Mhm.
anything, you have bigger problems than you ever
Right.
could have imagined.
Right. Because they don't trust that they can
They're
give their
safe.
opinion. Yep.
Yep.
Right.
That's a
hmm
massive,
hmm
massive indicator of
hmm
where, what's the
hmm
saying? If you are pointing one finger, there's four
Uh-huh.
pointing back at you.
hmm
And we have to, it starts with us.
hmm
So, yeah, to your point,
hmm
absolutely. One thing you
hmm
should be doing is
hmm
consistently, and I don't mean
hmm
doing the surfacey, doing your
Yes.
rounds,
What will your
walking
top
through the
five?
office, or
Hmm
saying, "How you doing,
hmm
Susie?"
hmm
Anything you need when
hmm
they know you're not present,
hmm
you're not listening, there's
Right.
nothing you can do about
Yeah.
it because you're rushing to the
hmm
next meeting. So, like,
hmm
nope, all
hmm
good.
Right. Well, and we're not going to give our opinions, our thoughts, if we know that either A, we're going to get our head bit off, or B, they're just going to be ignored. And that's where the whole, where it really is the difference between a leader and a boss. The boss is going to say, nope, can't do that. The leader is going to say, we can't do that, but here's why. And then they're going to encourage, okay, come to us again, all of those various things. And that really is, and one of the things that I also find very interesting is a lot of times the leader is not the boss, right? It's the second in command, it's the admin assistant, it's whoever, right? They're the people who are actually the leaders of the team, the business, whatever it is, because they empower. I talk about this a lot. I'm here in Atlanta, the home of Chick-fil-A, right? And they are, huge on empowering their employees. And I had, somebody tell me one time, they said, go in and order one chicken nugget. They said, you can't do that in any other place. And Chick-fil-A, they will tell you, it's my pleasure to serve you, and you will get one chicken nugget for like a quarter or something like that. And so, but yeah, the employees are empowered to say, sure, I can do one chicken nugget. Now they might
Yes.
say, are you sure you wouldn't prefer four, or whatever? But they know that, first of all, they're not going to get in trouble for
Yes.
only selling one. And more importantly, as we said, they're encouraged to take that initiative.
And when you encourage them to walk, talk, act like a
Mm-hmm.
CEO,
Mm-hmm.
they'll make that decision in
Yes.
real
Mm-hmm.
time because they know they
Mm-hmm.
have the permission,
Mm-hmm.
responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and authority.
Right.
And then they'll come back to
Mm-hmm.
you in your
Mm-hmm.
weekly meeting or your daily huddle
Mm-hmm.
and say, FYI, boss, just so you know,
Mm-hmm.
I gave Mrs. Smith
Mm-hmm.
one chicken nugget, and
Mm-hmm.
here's the why of why
Right.
I did it
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
positive impact on our
Mm-hmm.
business
Mm-hmm.
long term by me
Right.
doing that.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's funny. I was on a mastermind call earlier today, and one of the guys was talking about the fact that he had gone into Costco and bought one of the giant TVs, right? And he went home, was taking giant TV out of box and broke it. And he said, I went back to Costco and I told him, he said, I was truthful. And he said, is there anything you can do? And she said, let me check. and she went back and she got her manager because that was probably a little bit bigger than what her
Yeah.
pay
One
scale
chicken
could do.
nugget.
Yeah, and they came back and they said, "You are such a valued customer, I guess it would be there. We're going to refund the entire price of the TV." Now, of course, he bought another one, and they were able to return it, and all those various things. But she could have just as easily said, "Dude, you broke it. Too bad, so sad." And it was funny because he also didn't ask them for anything. He just waited to see what they would do, and he said, "I will be a customer for life because of that." And it really is those little things like that sometimes make a huge difference.
Yes. And it's because of how they've empowered their employees to do that.
Right. Right. And sometimes you do have to go ask the boss.
Yes.
But then you can tell them, last year we had flown to Las Vegas. We were going to the Pac-12 women's basketball tournament, and we had this whole big package bought and all sorts of things. And we were staying at the MGM Grand Hotel. And unfortunately, we landed and discovered that my mother had passed away.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
so, well, thank you. She was fine the day before and then not. So it was like, well, it was exactly what she would have wanted. But anyhow, we go into the MGM and I find the concierge and I said, here's what's happened. I understand you might have to charge us, but you need to know we're not going to be here. And she started to say something and then she caught herself and she said, "Just a moment." So the first thing she did was she went and she got us water and she brought us back water. And then she left and she came back and she was gone for not very long. And she came back and she said, "We've written off your entire thing. Please do not worry about it." And then we left. But she really did start to say, "We can't do anything." And then she thought, "Wait a minute." And so again, they had empowered her to do that. Now she could have just as easily come back and said, "I am so sorry. I checked and you had a non-refundable package. We're very sorry." Even that would have been okay, because she at least made the effort. But I think that's the thing, is making the effort and letting the employees know that they can do that. Sometimes you can't. I mean, but then you need to be able to have an explanation as to why you can't.
Right, exactly. And have our rules of engagement and standards.
Right.
Here's where you have permission and authority to make the best informed decision based on our standards. And here is where there's something that needs to come to me as a boss, as a leader, what have you. I could not agree more.
Right. I love it. One of the things that we've mentioned several times is that you have virtual staff in the Philippines. And, that is something that a lot of companies are doing, is they are taking some of their tasks and things overseas. But that seems really complicated. So how, how can businesses do that and do that in a way that works?
Yeah, I love that question. It's not complicated. I thought it was complicated. I fell into it 5 years ago when I had an attorney friend of mine who was selling his practice, and they were taking everything in-house, and he had a virtual assistant in the Philippines, and he said, "Do you have a client that might want her?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll hop in a Zoom room and interview her, what have you." 10 minutes into the interview, I'm like, "Nah, I want you, and I'm hiring you full time, and blah, blah, blah." And the rest is history, as they say. It's not complicated at all. I specifically use the Philippines over any other country because they are rooted in, as a culture, to never, ever disappoint from the day they were born.
And they're English based.
And they're English based, and they invest heavily, heavily, heavily in their personal professional development. And so I actually have an online staffing for the Philippines because it's just it's such a profit center and hardworking, and you change their lives. So it's not complicated. I have some people who work U.S. hours, some people who work Filipino hours, some people that work when they want to work. I don't care. Here's the job. Here's the goal. Here's the task. And we do a daily huddle every single day in a Zoom room. We do a weekly meeting. I practice what I preach, and it's ran by an agenda, and they come and they present data, information, analytics, what have you, which is really great because they're empowered to do so.
Right.
So it is not complicated. I think the most complicated thing, which is really fascinating because people think it's an overseas problem, but it's a problem. And it means that the reason it feels complicated is because you are not clear on
Right.
your
You
own
did not have
business.
a good job description,
You
task
don't,
description, whatever.
And it's okay if you don't have a good job description, but you're not clear on your role, your goals that you want to accomplish and the mission. I'm okay. So often I'll be like, you're hired. There's no job description, but here's your job for 30 days.
Right.
By the end of 30 days, you're going to tell me what your job description is. You're going to tell me what your KPIs are. And that's when you want to hire, right? So a lot of times when people are saying it's complicated and how can you do this, because they're not clear on what the vision of their business is, what they want their systems to look like, what they want their process or production or any of that.
Right. And, you know, and we need that no matter what. I have a VA who is my producer of this program. We've been together for, oh my gosh, at least 5 years. But I had several VAs before her, and I just kind of need you to do this, you know, and then it didn't work out because she didn't know what my kind of need to do this meant. You know, and then when I actually sat down and wrote a job description, that was when Kim and I were able to work. And then of course, what I said was, here's what, you know, here are the tasks that need done, things like that. You need to make it your own. You know, and so like the emails that we send out are very different from what I used to send when I was doing it myself, but they work perfect for her. But that was, you know, that was kind of one of those little things. It's like, that's not what I did. Wait a minute, that works better. Right. So, you know, that whole delegating and all of those things, that's one of those things that's hard for people to do. But yeah, you know, it works perfect. And I'm always asking her, what could we be doing better or different? You know, and even if it's just something as simple as like at the start of every year, we have a form email that goes out. Hey, do we need to reword this based on, you know, how people are communicating with you? Because they're not communicating with me, you know, so I don't know. But yeah, it's when I finally sat down and went, okay, here's what I really need you to do. Then we were able to go forward from there. But when it was just this nebulous, hey, I kind of need, it was not going to work.
No. I love that.
You know, and really, it's not that complicated. You know, and I think the thing that people get a little bit confused about is if they were an employee, we would have a job description. But when they're a consultant, a freelancer, a part-time, for some reason we think we don't need the job description. No, sometimes you need it more.
I agree wholeheartedly. And it really goes back to that two-sided relationship. You know, again, when you're hiring someone, and sometimes it is, I kind of sort of want it to kind of sort of look like this, what have you. When you hire right, whether stateside, overseas, part-time, fractional, W-2, doesn't matter. You want for them to be like, power of the pause, time out. Let me clarify and verify. I can, based on what you said, what I understand you want this to look like when I meet with you tomorrow at 2:00 is 70% into this, 20% into that. Like, and that's what you're looking for, regardless of where you're hiring.
Right. Well, let's wrap it up with a quick discussion about what happens when things are going wrong. How do you have those conversations with people, especially if you want to keep them, to kind of get them back on the right track?
Well, I would say number one is you do have to have a courageous conversation. So, you know, things are going wrong, whether you're the employee, the leader, the owner, doesn't matter, is that you actually create time for that and have the crucial conversation, have the
we don't want to do that, right? How many times do we put those off?
Yes. Well, yeah, you put them off and then they blow up. And, you know, in my book, Fix My Boss, that I have right here, I have a chapter in here on courageous conversations and in regards to that. So the goal is that you handle it in real time as soon as possible. So often as entrepreneurs, they're like, I don't have time right now to do it. or I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid he or she's going to quit or walk out, or, they feel like they have to have everything perfectly aligned.
I just don't like confrontation.
Well, people say that all the time. And in my opinion, there is no such thing as confrontation. There is no such thing as conflict. The only reason we get to a place of confrontation and conflict is because we push things down for so long. And now they come to a head where we have to
and
have
it's some tiny little thing that happens and it's volcano.
Yes. So I would say first and foremost, get ahead of it and set up the framework where you are doing quarterly evaluations, or what I'd like to call employee growth plans, where you are doing weekly meetings with an agenda and you're checking in, you're having the conversations. What didn't work about last week? What didn't work about that event we did? What you're allowing for the conversations in there. And then you're doing the communication. You talk to any divorce attorney, you talk to anyone who's going through a divorce or a breakup or what have you, we stopped communicating.
Right.
That is the root cause of it all. Right. And so often entrepreneurs, we justify it that we're so busy. We're so busy. Well, the day you're not busy is the day you're out of business. So nobody's ever going to wake up and find this pile of time. It doesn't happen. So you have to live a business and interact with your employees by design, not default. So if you are feeling that niggling feeling and you know there is time for a conversation and things are going wrong, handle it fast. Right. Handle it fast and anchor to some kind of framework, whether it's Crucial Conversations or it's First Among Equals, any book out there, you can chat GPT, how to have a hard conversation with my employee. There's no short of resources in this day and age.
Right. Right. Well, oh my gosh, Molly, this has been so interesting, even though I don't have employees. But you never know when I might, right? But it's so interesting. And I think it is something that pertains to everybody, because we either are the boss or we are the employee, or even if, we're the volunteer or the team leader or whatever, all of this is very pertinent. And so, as we mentioned at the start, you do focus on working with law firms, but tell us, how do people find you and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is to go to my website, Hiring and Empowering Solution. You can get my book here, Fix My Boss. It is not legal specific at all, intentionally, where I'm talking about law firms so I can resonate with I do flat fee retained search recruiting, and I also do overseas Filipino recruiting as well for outside of the legal industry as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, this really has been such a great discussion. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners and our viewers with?
I would say don't go it alone. If you own a business or you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you have a side hustle where you're trying to build it so you could leave your real-time job, whatever your story is, in this day and age, you don't have to go it alone. If it's starting with marketing, if it's starting with sales, I highly recommend. You don't need the six-figure salary, and just get started and hire someone, even if you don't have perfect job description or what have you. Just be really clear on what you are not good at, what sucks the life out of you, what you want to delegate, and start there.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having such a fascinating discussion with Molly McGrath, the founder of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.